up, Internet, and welcome back to On the Sofa Live Extra. If you're new, do subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay in the loop. Okay, firstly, before we kick off, I just want to apologize for the noise you can possibly hear from outside. The streets are playing tonight here in Leeds, so that's what you can hear. So my apologies. But anyway, we soldier on. This is my occasional live stream where I talk about all the news items that I didn't get time to talk about in the mainstream. So let's crack on with the first story tonight. Just 3 stories tonight. And the first one is about Lee Anderson. Seem to have a blank screen here. Oh. Okay. Let's try that again, shall we? That didn't work for some reason. Let's try loading up again and see if that works. It should do. Okay, technology. It's great when it works, but when it doesn't. Right. Oh. Okay. This story is from The Poke by John Plunkett. Free speech warrior Lee Anderson didn't take kindly to a question he didn't like, and it's Reform UK in a nutshell. No one likes free speech more than Lee Anderson. Why? The former Conservative MP turned chairman of Reform UK likes free speech even more than his daily bacon sandwich. And yet, when Times radio presenter John Pinnar wanted to ask him about his party leader Nigel Farage and that 5 million quid, he certainly clammed up. He certainly clammed up, not just once, but 3 times. Haggis UK tweeted this: Lee Anderson, Reform MP, falls apart when John Pinnar questions him about Nigel Farage needing £5 million to compensate for lost earnings if he returned to politics. Let's have a look at the clip, or let's listen to the clip.
I mean, you know, it's your job and it's what you do to put the boot in that way. You're famous for it, and that's not necessarily a criticism. But there are these reports in the last couple of days, you have seen them, that Nigel Farage told Reform colleagues before the election that he'd need £5 million to compensate for lost earnings if he returned to politics, which he subsequently did. Now, the party denies that, and you will, I presume, deny that. Is that a lie, do you think, Lee? Is it a smear?
John, I was invited on this interview today to talk about Andy Burnham's speech today. What's this got to do with Andy Burnham's speech?
Well, we're talking about politics, and we're talking about politics at the moment is about Reform's relative position.
I was invited to come on this interview today to talk about Andy Burnham's speech today. What's this last question got to do with any of that? It's got absolutely nothing to do with that at all. So
it bears understanding of the leader of your party and your party.
You're talking absolute nonsense, John. Like I say, for the 3rd time, I came on this interview today, and you asked me to come on to talk about Andy Burnham's speech today. What you're saying now has got nothing to do with that.
I want to take your comment, and you've given me a
I've given you a comment, yeah.
Tell me this, then.
He doesn't like the tough questions, does he? And that's the thing about reform. You know, none of the reformers like to be scrutinized. They hate any kind of scrutiny, and it's because they've been spoilt over the years. They've hardly had any scrutiny whatsoever from the mainstream media. But now, all of a sudden, they're getting scrutiny, and they hate it. They hate any kind of scrutiny. They hate having to answer tough questions because they're used to softball questions. They don't like it up 'em. Dave Lawrence said, Anderson can't hack being challenged, can he? Scott Johnson said, they absolutely hate the thought of any legitimate scrutiny into their party, don't they? Right Honourable Will, Portfolio for Sarcasm, said, he absolutely fell apart. Yeah, he did. Nigel, man of the people Farage, needs £1 million a year. Lee, common sense. Anderson can't defend it, so refuses to talk about it. Get this cult out of British politics, says Leicester Worker. Guy Burrow said he knows Farage is totally 100% up the Khyber without a paddle and has no answers about the obvious clear-cut bribe. Bruce McD said, extraordinary arrogance from Lee Anderson, or does he just not have an answer that will stand up to scrutiny? Asked by John Pennar to comment on the claims that Nigel Farage told senior reform colleagues that he would need £1 million a year to make up for the GB News salary. Oh. I'll start that one again, actually. Bruce McD said this, extraordinary arrogance from Lee Anderson, or does he just not have an answer that will stand up to scrutiny? Asked by John Pennar to comment on the claims that Nigel Farage told senior reform colleagues that he would need £1 million a year to make up for the GB News salary, which he would forego if he were to stand for election, Anderson just refuses to answer. The £5 million question isn't going away, Mr. Anderson. Asking about is scrutiny, not harassment. Patricia said this, out of his very shallow depth. Arma Wadi said Count Binface pledges to make 99p flakes. Meanwhile, Lee Anderson turns out to be a 30p snowflake. And that's it. Yeah, Lee Anderson he's a staunch champion of free speech until it comes to scrutiny against him and his dear leader Nigel Farage. And the Poke are right. It does sum up the Reform Party in a nutshell. They can't stand any kind of scrutiny. Even the slightest bit of scrutiny they balk at. They can't take it. And it doesn't bode well if they ever get to their hands on the levers of power, if they ever get into 10 Downing Street. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Okay, next segment. This is from Zia Youssef. Burnham had no mandate. He must call a general election. Let's hear what he had to say.
This is a man who does not believe in anything. He's already lost control of his parliamentary party that has some elements within it that have at least tried to, for example, delay indefinite leave to remain grants to the Boris wave of migrants, for example. But those elements are being completely overwhelmed.
I mean, Zia, you say he doesn't...
by the broader backbench MP group. So what we're going to see is more open borders and more stagnation for the British economy. If you're talking about reindustrializing Britain, what does that mean? Well, we have to reverse the process of deindustrialization of Britain that has happened over the last 20 years over successive Labour.
The interviewer should have persevered in interrupting him, in my opinion. She started to interrupt him, but just let him waffle on, let him filibust. Interviewers shouldn't do this. I've seen this time and time again, especially when it comes to reform. They just allow them to talk and talk and talk and filibust and hardly ever interrupt. And if they get interrupted, they just allow themselves to be interrupted and allow them just to talk and talk with hardly any interruptions whatsoever. They need to be more assertive with reform and also with politicians in general. But especially with reform.
And Tory governments. And that is, for example, the shocking cost of energy. We have amongst the highest costs of energy on the planet. And has he got a plan to do that? No, he's still going to continue with the mad religious net zero crusade. So nothing is going to change there. I
don't think he is going to continue with the, as you put it, net zero crusade, because he's planning to do some more drilling in the North Sea. He's going to, drill for oil and gas, which is utterly ridiculous. Seeing that we're in the middle of a heat wave. I think I've just seen a headline that Scotland is on fire at the moment. Well, not the whole of Scotland, obviously, but you know what I mean. And just generally, the world is on fire. And yet he's going to drill for more oil and gas. Ridiculous. So for Zia Youssef to sit there and say that he's going to continue with the net zero crusade, it's right, it's nonsense. I don't think he knows what he's talking about.
We're going to see continued increases in taxation, including on the most productive people within society. All this talk of things like a wealth tax, all that's going to do is make investment in Britain even less attractive. We'll see what he's going to do with capital gains tax. It looks like that's going to go up too. So what does reindustrializing Britain mean? It means reversing what we've seen over the last 20 years. What Burnham is talking about is accelerating it. And in terms of the first point about devolution, again, what does that mean? Is he going to truly devolve, for example, the powers of taxation to local areas? I mean, that would be something that would be a major.
And of course, all of this waffling, all of this speculation is going completely unchallenged. Come on, interrupt, challenge him.
Change constitutionally. There is absolutely no mandate to do that. Maybe it is something that the British people want, but I go back to a point the reformer made time and time again. He has no mandate. 0.03%.
You have no mandate. You're completely unelected. And furthermore, most of your MPs are former Tory MPs. They didn't start a by-election when they moved over from the Tories to Reform, did they? But no, it's it's okay for them, and now you're saying it's not okay for Andy Burnham. Which is it?
Of the British public voted for him. And I'm afraid if you look at the history of this, when prime ministers come in, having not been voted for based on putting a manifesto in front of the British people, and when they are vacuous and are simply trying to people please, what happens is they come in, they give a really good vibesy set of speeches, and then reality kicks in, they tank in the polls and they get replaced. And that's why Reform are saying, if you really believe in these things, Andy, then put it to the British people, write down your plan, put it in a manifesto, let's have a general election.
She didn't challenge him at all. Unbelievable. But let's see what people said in the comments. The Receipts UK said, remind us again who elected you. That's right, nobody, because you are unelectable. Even Reform UK Limited won't allow you to stand. And even you got elected under your own logic. And even if you got elected under your own logic, you would deport your own parents. I bet they are so proud and probably vote Labour. Cremant camaraderie, #green transition. But the Labour Party does have a mandate. Like it or not, and I don't, they have a supermajority in Parliament and can do whatever they like. And that's the thing. You may not like it, but they do have a sizable majority. And Andy Burnham, yes, he didn't get elected by the people, but that is how our democracy works. Unfortunately, we don't vote. Well, when we vote in a general election, we don't vote for the prime minister as such. We vote for the political party, and the leader of that party, whoever is the leader of that party, happens to become the prime minister. And at the moment, the leader of the party is Andy Burnham. I suppose if he was going to change the manifesto completely, then I suppose he would have to call a snap election, but he hasn't. Not really, but we'll see whatever policies he puts in place, and maybe if he does change the manifesto completely, maybe he will call an election. But we'll see. But he doesn't. But again, he's not obligated to. Buddy Hell said, "Did Liz Truss have a mandate? How about every right-winger's hero, Winston Churchill? I mean, you call yourself Shadow Home Secretary and no one's elected you. In other words, you don't have a mandate." Jen Wood says Mr. Nobody, who thinks he's a somebody. The Purple Pimpernel said, "Explain your own mandate, Dr. Cuntface." Chris and Greg said, "He doesn't need to, just go away." But that's the thing, he doesn't go away. He's like a bad penny. And he's always on question time, even though he's not elected. It's ridiculous. Sue, #NHS love, #FBNHS, said, "And you are?" Catman, #FBPE, said, "You really are a very bitter, irrelevant, unliked little person, Mahadad Ziauddin Yusuf, sitting there all day, every day, attacking people for achieving something you will never achieve, that is, get elected to Parliament." Why this person felt the need to call him by his full name, I'm not sure. But I'll let you read into that what you will. Right Honourable Will, portfolio for sarcasm, I think we've had him before, said, by that measure, none of your defective Tories have a mandate. Call by-elections for them all immediately. Yeah, exactly. Shatner's said, posted this meme with the heading, Farage received £5 million from a donor before he became MP. Jennifer Robinson said, no constitutional reason for general election. Shows how little Yusuf knows about the way our government works. Nigel Farage might not get back into government, even then what? David Sidewell, I think there's more to this than meets the eye. I am beginning to think this is planned by Labour and the establishment. First you put in a bunch of stooges, Starmer and Reeves, to bring the country to its knees. Then you replace them with a messiah who's going to save the country. I guess that's what it says. Let's have a look. Yeah, save the country. All this is to T-O-O, wrong spelling of two, but okay, to try to stop reform at the next general election. It's all theatre at our expense. And you know what they say, bullshit baffles brains. Okay. Inevitable Stella said, what's your mandate, Mohammed? Oh, I forgot, you're not even an MP. And she posted a meme. Zia Yusuf, shadowy minister for bullshit. And finally, James Lipton, hashtag FBPE, said the Labour Party has a mandate until 2029. There's nothing you can do to change that. So you should concentrate on getting Farage through his self-inflicted by-election. If he gets beaten by Count Binfaced, he's toast. And even if he loses in Clacton, reform goes down with him. And of course, she shared the now famous meme. Excellent. Yeah. Zia Yusuf absolutely rinsed on Twitter. You love to see it. Okay, one more story tonight. This next story is from The Canary by Willem Moore. Restore Britain stuffed full of Hitler-loving freaks, report finds. When you look under a rock, it's common to find all manner of creepy crawlies. We mentioned this because Hope Not Hate just took a look at what's going on in Restore Britain, and would you believe it, their investigation points to Hitler admirers. Politics UK tweeted, new, an investigation has found Hitler admirers, neo-fascists and ethnic cleanser supporters are installed in Restore Britain's local branches. To which Mukhtar quote tweeted, is anyone actually surprised by this? They say it with their chests on here, and Rupert Lowe just ignores it. They were calling his son a race traitor when he got married. Yeah, that's a good point. Creepy crawlies, as Hope Not Hate report, activists from the far-right pro-ethnic cleansing group remigration now have taken root in Restore. If you're unfamiliar with remigration, it's a pan-European movement that wants to deport what they call non-native populations. If you think about this for 2 seconds, things become muddled. The writer of this piece, for example, is 1/4 Irish, 1/4 Austrian, and 1/2 English. Am I an English native? Even if I had 4 English grandparents, how native would that make me, given that our country has been intermingling for centuries? Are you native English if you have a normal ancestor, an Anglo-Saxon ancestor, a Roman ancestor? Yeah, good question. The reality is remigration now don't want to protect natives. They want to protect white people. And mostly they're pretty upfront about this now. Take this from far-right agitator Steve Laws. He tweeted this: "We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children." I'd say that's pretty blatant. That's not even a dog whistle. That's a human whistle. Steve Laws is the leader of Remigration Now, the group which is said to be infiltrating Restore Britain. And like most white supremacists, he's heavy on the white and light on the supreme. Here he is pictured on the right. And there's a tweet from Hope Not Hate. Members of Remigration Now, the pro-ethnic cleansing group run by Steve Laws, are embedded within Restore Britain, the party led by Rupert Lowe MP. This includes figures in positions of local influence. Restore factionalism. If remigration sounds like something the Nazis would do, that's not a coincidence. Laws has said he would have been straight behind the Nazis if he'd lived in 1930s Germany, and as Hope Not Hate have reported, many RN activists are former members of the fascist Homeland Party, Law's previous vehicle, while others have links to the neo-Nazi groups Patriotic Alternative, White Vanguard, the Active Club Network, and more. In a Telegram message sent on the 25th of February, Laws told his fellow Remigration Now activists, "I would advise any of you not as damaging as myself to get in as branch officers, candidates, etc. We can create a stronghold in Restore and really hold some weight over the direction." Law seems to have gotten what he wanted, because several Remigration Now activists are now embedded in Restore, according to Hope Not Hate, as they added, "This includes individuals who have praised Hitler and used extreme racial slurs. An RN member behind a Restore Croydon X account also ran a separate account dedicated to raping and cannibalizing the corpses of ethnic minorities." That is evil. That is some evil shit. That is wicked. Restore leader Rupert Lowe has claimed he opposes far-right ethno-nationalists or neo-Nazism, and yet these people are in his party. According to Laws, several of the senior members of the party are of his mind too, and are in regular contact with him. Decline. The Times, picking up this story, isn't the first time that a national newspaper has noticed that Restore is stuffed full of fash. As we covered in June, The Telegraph published a very similar piece. And there's a tweet from The Telegraph. white supremacists with links to banned neo-Nazi groups are helping to fund Restore Britain. Outlets like The Times have increased their focus on reform recently too. It seems that the establishment media have become uncomfortable with these new far-right parties, which are filled with the far right and prone to endless financial scandals. The Tories also had their fair share of far-right members and financial scandals, of course, but they roughly knew what they could get away with, and it wasn't wishing Hitler happy birthday, as one Restore member literally did. Let's read some of the comments on this article. Andy Gaskell said, "When you wrote normal, I suspect you meant to write Norman." Roger Bromley replied, "I am sure it is a typo, but if you think about it, it is very apt, as these guys would conflate Norman with normal, as they would regard anyone not espousing their far-right venom as abnormal." And Toby Inkster said, "Thankfully, I don't think I have any normal ancestors." Anon said, "The only good fascist is a ... Great work exposing this open secret." Ashfaq Hussein said, "Islam will take over the world and cleanse you." Right. Whoa. And Dirida's mom posted a whole essay, which I'm not going to read, but if you're that way inclined, you can read it at your own leisure. Catriona said, "Your source is questionable, I'm afraid. Hope Not Hate is a campaign group aligned with Labour." Yeah, I thought that might be the case, but I wasn't sure. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everything they say is wrong. That doesn't necessarily mean that their research into Restore is incorrect. But I do see where she's coming from. And there's a whole other essay here from James, which I'll leave you guys to read at your leisure, but I'm not going to. Too long didn't read. So there you have it. Restore Britain have got some questionable members in their ranks who hold very, very questionable views. But let me know your thoughts about all this in the comments. Okay, that just about wraps things up for tonight. If you've made it this far, thanks for watching. And if you're new, do subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay in the loop. Okay, bye for now. Oh, before I go, looks like we've got some comments here. Oh, all from Purple. She said this: "Politicians have gotten too soft from being pampered by Patrician media." And she said, "Same as Trump's plan for green energy." Yeah, exactly. Oh, yes, you've been ignoring me the entire time. Oh, sorry. When I'm in the zone, I'm in the zone. That's the problem. And the problem is, most of the time I've got the article up on my screen. So I don't see the comments until afterwards, until I close the article down. But thanks for contributing anyway. I appreciate it. Anyway, that's it for tonight. Goodbye for now. Until next time.